Hello and welcome to the first episode of Flashback Firsties. I'm the Archivist. Now, what is Flashback Firsties? Flashback Firsties is a show where I talk about older first issues. They can be from any time, any company, but it does generally have the same format as first issues. Now, it's not going to be every other week. It's not going to be replacing binging on comics when it's an off week for that. But it's just something so I can expand my reviewership, as it were. Um, I'm sorry about the lighting and how this is going to look completely different than most of the other segments of this, but the audio had way massive problems, and, well, anyways, no one really cares about that. Let's talk about comics. Today's first Marvel issue is Battle of the Atom #1, a Marvel event that came out in September and October of 2013, which I know a few people won't enjoy that it's in my Flashback Firsties episode, but it's outside the border. So, before we step into the series proper, there is some backstory. Mutant kind is divided into two camps after the Schism storyline, and the original 5 X-Men were brought to the present day by Beast because of Cyclops going mildly evil during the Avengers vs. X-Men event. Wow. Apparently X-Men continuity actually sticks, unlike other teams. So we find out that the Originals, yes, I'm going to call the all-new X-Men team the Originals, because they aren't all new. They're in fact over 50 at this point, are operating out of the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning. With their headmistress Kitty Pryde, they go to take down a mutant criminal. But, whoopsie, Sentinels arrive and start blasting everything in sight. Well, the Originals get slightly owned, but they're saved by the Uncanny X-Men, headed by the evil that is Scott Summers. Or X-Face, as I like to call him for obvious reasons. But, surprise, young Scott gets blasted by a not-quite-dead Sentinel, and X-Face disappears. But don't worry, he comes back quickly after young Scott's heart gets restarted. This sparks the W-Men, that is, the Wolverine and the X-Men version of the X-Men, to turn around and say, you guys need to go back to your own time. You're screwing things up here. But no, future X-Men come back before that can happen. Yay! Unlike when I read Infinity and felt horribly lost, I picked this up, and with some minor hiccups along the way, it feels like it's a forward-moving story that isn't washing back on itself and needing 15, prologues to get going. Now, that's not to say it doesn't have bad, but it does really have relatively tight writing, showcasing each faction, and it never made me feel lost or confused. It's an event comic that I can just really get behind. Frank Cho plus Stuart Immonen and Wade Rowiger, sorry if I butchered either of those names, on art for this issue is really good for the most part, as is Marty Gracia's colors, but again, for the most part. What I mean by for the most part is that sometimes there can be these really cartoony expressions that slip through, as well as some outlines to discern characters from actions and backgrounds a couple times, which isn't bad, but I feel it's a cheat on the colorist's part. Then again, it could actually be part of the character's power, and if that's the case, I'm sorry, I don't know the character that generally gets the outlines. So. But otherwise, there's nothing in the art that's bad. On the other hand, the writing has a few nitpicks in it, like how the first couple pages is Ilyana Rasputin, who had traveled to the future to see if it's worth fighting for or something like that, writing a letter to Scott. It's not inherently bad, but it's only a page or two, and it's not really needed. You could have added more fight scene or anything like that, but it just felt out of place. Now time for a major nitpick. It took original Scott to die for a couple seconds to finally get Kitty and the W-Men to go, maybe they shouldn't be in our timeline. And this is after over a year of issues for All New X-Men have been out. So it's not like the thought shouldn't have crossed anyone's mind before. But then there's also Marvel's timeline in and of itself being completely screwball. Like when young Scott died, X-Face shouldn't have vanished at all because the young Psyche dying would have created a divergent universe similar to when Professor X died, or when Magneto was killed, or when One More Day happened. Yeah, One More Day should be a divergent universe. In fact, if you want to get into it, Marvel Now is just that universe trying to correct itself. But also, X-Face shouldn't have vanished at all because young Scott's heart was always going to be revived, and X-Face would have been there no matter what happened, if that makes any sense. But that's me looking way too hard into it, and it really is a fun read. So my final verdict is that it's actually a really good issue, and I definitely am picking up the rest of this when I can, and even going to check out the all-new X-Men, because it doesn't seem as bad as I thought it was going to be. So, I say pick up the trade, if only to check out the full story. This review is for Jorge Calvo, who guessed the ending credits song for First Issues number 1. So, let's talk about the Saviors, number 1. Tomas Ramirez is pretty average Joe, stuck in a nowhere town. But he doesn't seem to mind. He's pretty liked in the town, but all that changes when, just chillin' and smoking some weed, he sees the sheriff of the town talking with a lizard man. It's at this point that I need to bring up that when I picked this up, I had no clue what type of book it was going to be. At the start, I assumed it would be some slice of life or something like that, but I think about this point is when I either figured it was going to turn into a Fear and Loathing sort of slice of life, or there's actually an alien conspiracy. I'll let you pick it up to figure out where it goes, but immediately I can tell you that the ending to this should stay a secret until you read it, because it's that much of a, well, how the fuck did we get here ending? So this little gem was written by James Robinson and drawn by Jay Bone. Both do exceptionally well on this. I've had mixed opinions about Robinson's working in the mainstream, but this return to creator-owned content really struck me in a good way. I really don't know that much about J-Bone, as I only know him as an inker more than anything else, like on Batman the Spirit, which was light, and talking with a few friends, apparently, he's best known for his cartoony art style and comics he's worked on being light and airy. So, I could see why he'd be jumping at this chance for a black and white, almost noir-style comic that has a happy start, but gets a bit more mature later on. I think everyone should give this a read. It's not a bad read. In fact, I really enjoyed it. So it's definitely worth a read, and I would say once you've read it, you'll probably want to pick up the issues. You'd want to buy them, you want it in trade. This is a requested review from Chris Stanfield. The biggest reason I chose to do this one is because A, Chris is a pretty cool kid, and B, I grew up having this comic series. I used to sneak up to the attic to go through the boxes of comics, and The Question was one of the great comics that helped shape my value system. But for the most part, it's still a comic that I read yearly, and one day I'll own the entire late 80s series. But okay, so I've got to cut the fanboy out of me so I can properly give the 1987 Question number 1 a fair shake. Now then, the plot for this issue is that Vic Sage is the Question, a literally faceless vigilante who is cleaning up his city by dredging up all the dark secrets of its leaders, both the politicians and the underworld kind, which generally mix. We get to see his methods when he pulls out an eyes-only style broadcast to call out the commissioner of schools, which we get to see pisses off the bigwigs who send someone to off Vic because of the Question's activity. Even more so, Vic is given intel that brings the Question into a horrible trap with Lady Shiva at the helm. Well, the Question is beaten and then shot and then tossed into the river, his mask floating off as he hits the bottom. This is a quintessential first issue of a solo series for me. We get to see who the character is as a person, with Vic Sage not caring about his own identity in pursuit of justice, though he does wear a mask when dealing directly with the scum of the city, for an overall safety factor. He helps out the less fortunate. He has a steady relationship but never loses focus over his mission. Plus, we end with him possibly dead at the bottom of a river, giving a great cliffhanger to draw you into the next issue, citing Dennis O'Neil as a personal favorite comic writer because of this series. But what about the art? It came out in 1987, so it must have aged horribly. Actually, I want to say that Dennis Cohen's pencils are outdated, or Rick Magyar's inks are stale, but you know what? They still look great even today. The sketchy style adds that noir feel. The colors still work to get across the setting, though, to be fair, I'm not sure if the colors are that muted by choice or because of age. So, verdict. I can't lie. I'm not objective in this at all. I love this book. I love this series, and everyone should check out this work of art. It's not just a comic book. It's literary art with great visuals and it's just so damn amazing that it is in fact number 3 on my top comics of all time ever list. Well, with that said, I'm the Archivist. This was Flashback Firsty. Stay tuned next week for Binging on Comics Injustice, and Monday hit me back for first issues. This is the Archivist signing off.
Bum 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 ba da 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 bum 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 ba da da bum 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 ba da 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 bum.